Good morning. The Committee of the Whole is called to order. Materials for the Committee of the Whole are in the shared Google Drive. All right, labeled 3.20-.23, Committee of the Whole. Proposed amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk via email, session drive at guamlegislature.org. Amendments not in writing will be called out of order. My colleagues should have had enough time already. Rules of engagement, 3 rounds for discussion. We will have 2 rounds of questions for the panel, with each senator allotted 5 minutes for questions, not including responses. Time to speak may be yielded from more than one member to another. A member who yields the member's time on a question yields all that member's time on that question and may not later speak, even if all the time yielded was not used. That's found in the Standing Rules section 1.02D3. At the completion of the 2 rounds of questions, panelists will be excused, 3rd round for amendments or comments to speak on the bill. After we complete the discussion of the bill, I will allow the sponsor to close, and I will entertain a motion for the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole, followed by a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, at which time I will report out the bill as recommended by the Committee of the Whole. I will now read the bill number is 32-37 COR. I'd ask the sponsor to speak on the bill, but at this point I would also like to recognize that Representative DOE are not present. They were asked to attend at 8:30, which we all waited since 8:30, and they're still not here. But we will have a quick recess so we can get the sponsor to come and introduce his bill and talk about his bill before we begin the round of questions. And when we begin, we will start with Senator Will and proceed to his left, my right, and we'll go around until we complete, and then we'll start the 2nd round. All right? So why don't we have a quick recess while we're waiting for the sponsor to announce his bill. Thank you.
The Committee on Whole is back in order. I'll recognize Minority Leader Senator Blas. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I appreciate that the rules were set earlier with regard to how this is going to be conducted. This is a very important matter and everything, and I'd like to be able to make a motion notwithstanding what was said as the rules, that in the discussions of these things that members be allowed, other than 5 minutes, 10 minutes per round to be able to discuss the matter.
Okay. No problem. Do we have any objection? No objection? So ordered. Senator Dueñas, you are recognized on your bill, please.
Tidus Masi, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss and open on Bill 3237 in this Committee of the Whole. Madam Chair, several months ago, there was an announcement by our governor that we would be implementing a plan that was approved by DOA for a 22% pay raise for the general pay plan of the government of Guam. Upon seeing that, Madam Chair, and seeing what happened basically last year in June, where the teacher pay raises at Department of Education were subsidized by the American Rescue Plan that was designed primarily for COVID relief, to provide for mitigation issues surrounding our schools, to provide for now what has been proposed maintenance, renovations, upkeep, assisting with sanitation and all the deficiencies that our school system has. But yet we remained the fact that the ARP monies last year were used for salary increase. Madam Chair, what I observed, and I think what many of us observed in this hall, was the fact that now we've seen multiple pay raises that have been implemented outside of the budgetary process. Madam Chair, I believe that when we do pay raises and this kind of massive fiscal impact to our general fund, which is subsidized, of course, by our taxpayers, they pay the bills. These things should be contemplated within the structure of the budgetary process. Because, Madam Chair, that is where and when we decide what monies are available for the operations of our government and how we're going to fund the true priorities of our community: healthcare, education, public safety, and of course the general services that the government provides. So, Madam Chair, I believed that there was two things that needed to happen going forward for this august body to speak. And that was to introduce legislation that would stop this process from arbitrary timing with regard to pay raises, and also cure the original sin. I believe that the original sin was, even though the monies were out of our control, to allow for pay raises to be implemented using money that was designed and intended for the purposes of supporting our schools, supporting mitigation for COVID issues, supporting the issues now surrounding the issues of maintenance, upkeep, and the mitigating circumstances that exist that are required to happen going forward. Madam Chair, I think it's important to give the backdrop to this because we are going to be discussing this bill with Department of Education on the basis for the intention of the appropriation put forward in this bill. There have been representations that Department of Education has multiple sources of revenue. We will have that question answered. But here's the three questions I want to get answered, Madam Chair, in strict compliance with what this bill calls for. This bill calls for an appropriation of $30 million to the Department of Education. And in the findings and intent, that $30 million is designed to, as I mentioned earlier, Madam Chair, correct the original sin of funding pay raises with federal ARP money, and to ensure that if there are any other obligations that exist within the Department of Education, whereby other ARP monies or any other issues where they were not funded properly, such as utilities or the like, that this revenue would be what this bill is calling for. Madam Chair, the three questions that I think that I know the answer to based on the testimony from Department of Education is that $22 million was used to fund pay raises. Madam Chair, what has been presented to us is that proposals that are coming forward with regard to additional pay raises under the GPP, there's a requirement for that. I don't know if that's been funded or not funded, but it has been presented in testimony that has been put before us. And the third question, Madam Chair, that I believe that I know the answer, but we have to put on the record, is that there are utilities and other operational costs that have been charged or may be charged against ARP funds. If that is the truth, Madam Chair, then I believe we will be doing the right thing. We will be doing the right thing to pass this bill to return that money which should have been originated from the general fund to begin with. I believe, Madam Chair, that the $130 million in ARP funding that's been represented will be realized through this bill to ensure that they do not have operational requirements outside of that 130. In closing, Madam Chair, and looking forward to the Department of Education and the representations that they will be making to us today, and I'm certainly hoping that some of their fiscal members will be here, or the acting superintendent can restate this, is that the perennial issues with Department of Education that have been put forward to us by Department of Education now in no less than 4 hearings that we've conducted, that our good chairman and many of us have attended throughout the last several weeks and months, is that what really exists within the Department of Education is a lack of a dedicated funding source for education, for maintenance and repairs and upkeep of the schools. That has been what has led to the perennial issue of our schools being in the condition that they are right now. 4 years ago, they did a study of what the total cost of deferred maintenance was over the years, and it came out to $98 million, Madam Chair. From what I understand, that has never been funded. Our good acting superintendent says this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because many of us, rightly so, have been chided for not accomplishing the mission of properly bringing the schools to where they need to be. This is the turning point. This is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because while many of us did fall short, what really fell short, truthfully, was finances. That's not the problem now, Madam Chair. There is finances. And I want to thank each and every one of you that have dedicated themselves to support this. And I want to also state, Madam Speaker, that there is an amendment being prepared for the bill that will transform it into a budget format. And we'll be moving that during the third round. So that will conclude my opening on the bill, and hopefully we have a very fruitful, spirited dialogue on this and have our education officials confirm what they've been speaking to over the last several weeks when they've appeared before us for other forums and formats to discuss the perennial issues plaguing the Department of Education. Madam Chair, I thank you for this opportunity to open on the bill and to be able to give a background that I believe is absolutely important to support the reason why we're here, in light also of the other 2 bills that have been discussed in this session, Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair, that will really bring to fruition transformational change within the Department of Education. Sujus Masi, Madam Chair.
Sujus Masi, Senator Dueñas, for your opening remarks. At this time, we're going to just take a short recess as we welcome in on Zoom the Acting Superintendent, Judy Wampat, as well as Frank Cooper-Nurse, who's also here from DOE. So we're just going to take a short recess to bring them in and swear them in, and we'll get started. Thank you. The Committee on Whole is back in order. Before we get started, we're going to swear in our panel and also swear in acting Superintendent Speaker Judy Wampat.
Under penalty of perjury, you will affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Madam Chair, under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant of Arms. And I'm going to have OFB first introduce themselves.
Vanessa Valencia, OFB.
Hafa, good morning, everyone. Acting Deputy of Finance and Administrative Services, Franklin Cooper Nurse.
Selini Higa, GDOE. Program Coordinator.
Philip Tovis, Facilities and Maintenance Manager.
And on our Zoom, we have Acting Superintendent. Please recognize yourself.
Ask Phil to pass my bag.
Judy, can you say something, please? Acting Superintendent, can you hear us okay? And if you can, please recognize yourself. Okay, we're going to take a short recess. Committee on Rules is back in session. We're going to recognize on Zoom, in her introduction, Acting Superintendent Judy Wampat.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Judy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, just recognize who you are, and then we're going to move on. Your name?
Yes, half a day.
Yeah.
I'm Judith Wampat, the Acting Superintendent of the Department of Education.
Okay, thank you so much, Acting Superintendent, and thank you for joining us on Zoom. Next, I'd like to recognize Senator San Augustine to give the body some information for us to follow. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleagues, and to the people of Guam that are watching, in the Google Drive, you'll find two sets of documents. One of them is the Grant Status Report on ARP that Guam DOE has. It will identify the $183 million that they have. It will also identify on the documents attached is $122 million has been earmarked, but only $71 million have been encumbered. So I just wanted my colleagues to know and see the document, because this is going to be a very important document when we discuss any additional funding for DOE. And another information, just so that my colleagues are aware of, when the ARP was used, this was all done by the superintendent then, but the amount of money that was used was $10,880,458.3. I'll provide that information to my colleagues. And then $9 million was used for the superintendent's retention pay, totaling of $20,792,459 ARP funds. That was used. So if anything needs to be replenished or given to provide assistance to DOE, that would be the amount, because ARP was used that should have been used for the purpose of the schools. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing else further.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. And before we get started with our questions, we are going to have an opening remarks from Acting Superintendent Speaker Judy Wampat. Please go ahead, Judy.
Okay, thank you. Buenas and half a day, Madam Speaker and Senators of the 37th Guam Legislature. I am Dr. Judith Wampat, and I'm the Acting Superintendent of Education. My apologies, I'm currently in Washington, D.C. for a meeting with U.S. Ed and the Council of Chief State Officers. Thank you for this opportunity to submit testimony regarding Bill 32-37. Though a single bill, I am aware that it is part of a set of bills that are geared towards assisting the Department of Education with fixing our aged facilities by supporting our efforts to maximize the use of American Rescue Funds, ARP. We see and appreciate the enormous effort that is being made here and support the intent of these bills. Additionally, since I've been the acting superintendent, which is now just over a month, I've been here at the legislature 4 times and now 2 times on Zoom or with another member representing me, and had numerous meetings and discussions both in person and on the phone with many of you regarding our plans for facilities and maintenance, procurement, and capital improvement projects. With regards to the pay raises, I was able to testify in support of the effort to provide our administrative, professional, and support staff with an increase in their salaries in the hopes of retaining strong employees while at the same time attracting new talent. Unfortunately, we appear to be in a situation where some in the community view these bills and their related priorities as an either-or scenario, one where we have to pick one over the other. I believe this is not the case, and that it is possible to support each category, each priority. As someone who has seen firsthand the condition of our schools and has heard the pleas of our students, parents, teachers, staff, administrators, and community, I wholeheartedly support the intent of providing more resources to facilities and CIP. But I believe that we can do this without sacrificing our employee pay raises. We're all dedicated to our children and want the best education we can provide them. This, of course, includes clean and safe school facilities that are conducive to teaching and learning. At the same time, we must acknowledge the hard work of our employees by ensuring that their wages are competitive so we can both maintain and recruit high-quality workforce, a workforce that will result in improved services to not only our students, but their families and the people of Guam. We can support both. With the reprioritizing of our grant activities, we believe that we've allocated a sufficient amount of federal funding to facilities and CIP. Over the last month, as you know, I've tasked my management team to review and reprioritize our allocation of federal funds to prioritize facilities and CIP using ARP monies. Through these efforts, what was once a $79 million budget has increased to approximately $114 million, which is a significant increase of $35 million, an amount that we feel is adequate to address our immediate facilities and CIP needs. As you see, we are already utilizing ARP funds to address critical CIP needs at the schools. Can we benefit from more money for CIP? Absolutely. We can always benefit from more. But at this time, we are in a position to address our facilities and CIP needs through the current federal funding we have. This would, in turn, free up the funds in this bill to support the pay raises. Both priority areas are much needed, and both will have a lasting impact in the years to come. I propose, rather than having a one-time appropriation for facilities, which will adversely affect employees' pay, we ask that the legislature consider a long-term strategy to fund deferred maintenance through annual appropriations and public-private partnerships. As an example, based on current estimates, we ask that the legislature consider an annual appropriation of $5 million to support a public-private partnership to manage the maintenance of all our facilities. That is the 35 schools. Thank you again for this opportunity to provide testimony and for supporting our students and schools. Mr. Cooper Smith is available to answer any finance questions, and Mr. Phil Tovis is also there to respond to questions regarding facilities and CIP plans. And I also understand that we have two other staff members who handle ARP funds. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Acting Superintendent. Is there any other comments you would like to make before we start going for questions?
Maybe the one thing that some were asking, I know when Senator San Agustin was mentioning about what already has been encumbered, just to let you know that I've signed off already several documents to go to the Attorney General's office now for review. We did several for FBLG, GW Gym, and about 80 million for the 35 schools. So we are, so we are on track when it comes to, remember when I gave you guys the plan? So we are on track in following through and getting all of the IFBs out before we publish, and then before we, evaluate, and before we award.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to get started with some questions. Just a friendly reminder that you each have 10 minutes, but it's not counting the response that you receive from the panel. Okay, we're going to start off with Senator Parkinson. You're up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the benefit of the people watching, when did the ARP monies become available to the Department of Education? to anyone that can answer the question.
So we just verified on the grant award notice. It's April 8, 2021.
April 8, 2021. All right. I have to note that, we are in 2023 here, and I see that a vast majority of the money, as laid out in the grant status report, has not been spent. Can you please give me some background as to why that money has not been spent?
So a large portion of the funds right now, as our acting superintendent indicated, has been reprioritized and pushed into our facilities and maintenance and CIP. Two things occurred that was significant. One is a transfer of the grant and the reprioritization of these activities. And then two was actually having the technical ability internally and the capacity to do the large-scale scope of works to get us to a stage where GDOE can actually develop the procurement packages to go out and do these construction bids. In the process of putting these packages together, we realized that technical expertise did not exist in the Guam Department of Education. Therefore, the previous acting superintendent, Francis Santos, and actually even before then, our superintendent, John Fernandez, developed a memorandum of understanding with GPA to bring over some engineers. And I believe, Senator, you saw in the last meetings where GPA takes a big partnership and collaboration with GDOE in actually assisting us with the engineers, providing us those engineers on a daily basis, and doing the technical work to get us to a point where we're able to execute proper procurement and some of these CIP larger scale projects that we push along for contracting. So one of it was a transfer of the grant, reprioritization, having the technical ability, and then pushing these along to construction and CIP projects.
Okay, and is this also why this repair work was not done during the pandemic? Because it seems to me that would be an ideal time to have done all this work when we're sitting on this giant pile of money. Is this also why this wasn't done during the pandemic?
I can't answer as to why it wasn't done in the pandemic. I know there were several efforts at the schools that started with smaller assistance from our facilities and CIP team, but I do know that in working with the team, that's exactly what they were going through, using the HHF plan, making sure that we have a properly approved facilities and management improvement plan, and that we use that as the roadmap to identifying the critical needs of the schools, which was then adopted, provided to Phil and his team with GPA to use to develop the scopes of work for the critical CIP projects. So it came in phases. Could it have been done sooner and earlier? Possibly, right? And better planning. Hindsight's always 20/20. But with the current situation that we were operating with, we were working alongside HHF, and then we had to have the internal capacity to do so. The people that we originally had during that time period are not sitting at the table in terms of CIP and facilities and maintenance, which is again why we had to develop an MOU to get that technical capability in-house.
Okay. I'm noting here on the grant of status report that so far, $55 million roughly about has been encumbered or spent. About 20 million on pay raises and 35 million spent as part of the budget, from what I understand. That leaves a balance of about $183 million according to the grant status report. Is there any danger of you guys not spending all of that money before the deadline? Will you be able to spend this giant hoard of $183 million you guys are sitting on?
Let me go through the numbers and get you an updated grant status report. I know that the one that you have was probably the latest data that was provided to the EFSC, but if I can, for the record, just go through the ARP, current budget, current expenditures, encumbrance requisitions, and then the remaining balances, so you can see current progress. Current budget with the Guam Public School District is $239.4 million. Expended is $46.9. Encumbrance is $8.8 million. Requisitions is nearly $80 million, leaving a remaining balance to the Guam Public School District at $103.8 million. To answer your question, Senator, I think you asked, is there any danger that we do not spend this money? There's always that risk. When you're giving funds that have a obligation date that's primarily tied to contracting and large-scale CIP projects, there's always that risk. One of the things that we've been able to do and placed a lot of emphasis and time and resource in is making sure that we plan this appropriately. So the superintendent and our management team has been developing and working with our facilities and maintenance and CIP to develop not only our CIP and critical areas and critical needs of the schools, but developing a procurement strategy to get us to a successful execution and expenditure of these grants. So to answer your question, there's always that risk. We feel like right now we're in position, and you can see that with the recent requisitions, and as our superintendent indicated, just last week, we were able to release from our team approximately $80 million for the general refurbishment of all 35 schools. That is a large-scale contract that we're hoping to execute, have in place by the summer, and make sure that we can fully expend those funds prior to next year, not prior to next school year.
Okay. And so just for the record, the updated amount of unspent or unaccounted for funds is $103.8 million is what you have available, unspent, unaccounted for, or unencumbered.
So yes, I would say that that's the current remaining balance, but that does include requisitions. Requisitions doesn't always equal an expenditure. So yes, 103 right now is remaining, that's unencumbered, but inclusive of requisitions.
If I may, Senator, everyone, I sent it on the WhatsApp chat, the numbers that were just spoken for was provided. We'll get copies, but just for, to be faster, I put it on your WhatsApp.
May I may we have a 1-minute recess so I could review the updated version?
Okay, I'll give you guys all 1 minute, and then we'll actually make a copy. Just 1 minute, okay? Because I sent it on everybody's WhatsApp, so you have the latest version that Mr. Cooper Nurse was speaking about. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions are based on these numbers, so I would like to get the updated version.
Okay, just 1 minute, okay? Just 1 minute. In session, go ahead, Senator Parkinson, you're still up.
So I heard testimony from the acting superintendent that it would actually not be in competition if we were to have the pay raises and as well as the money for the schools. I would ask, would there be any utility for the schools in the pay raises? Like, would that help with your hiring at all if the pay raises were enacted?
Absolutely. I think what we learned, not only during the pandemic, but over the last few years, and even just with the management of this grant and the experience I've had with being the acting deputy, is we've seen a lot of good people and talent leave our department. I'm an acting deputy because your previous deputies left for higher paying positions in government. Phil is he was the acting facilities and CIP manager. He now has taken that role full time, and again, his predecessors have left for greener pastures. We absolutely see this as an opportunity for both. Both are critical, both are necessary for the education system and for absolutely supporting our school system and our students.
When was the last time the maintenance staff was given a raise?
We follow
The people that would be affected by the GPP.
So Guam Department of Education follows the GPP. I believe the last time any of our employees under the GPP saw any raise was during the 2014 CWA assessment where that was implemented.
Okay, and so with an adjustment by the GPP, would that include janitors and bus drivers and maintenance workers of the schools?
It includes everyone covered under the general pay plan. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and I've seen, you know, the testimony of the superintendent saying that the Department of Education, rather than having this one giant lump sum that compromises the government GPP pay raises, it might be better to have a yearly appropriation. Would it better serve the needs if this lump sum was broken up into a smaller yearly appropriation? Because, you know, I kind of think that maintenance is not a one lump sum thing. I think maintenance should be done every year. So is it the opinion of the people on this panel that it would be better served to have a smaller lump sum rather than doing this? Because, you know, I'm willing to throw you guys all the money in the world, but if you guys would be better served by a smaller amount on a more regular basis, would that be more helpful to you?
So in her testimony and what the department has strategized is a direct source funding for deferred maintenance that is provided in continuing appropriations. Will we benefit for any infusion in capital improvement projects? The answer was yes. But one of the things that we need is that continuous support for our facilities, similar to the lease schools. We've learned that our lease schools that are tied to a facilities and maintenance contract over the term of the lease agreement was an effective way to provide the necessary support to its facilities and upkeep. So that is the strategy that we think best fills, and it's also strategically aligned to how we want to execute and use our federal funds. You just mentioned it, Senator, that are you at risk? There's always a risk. Right now we are, again, time is against us in spending the upwards of $120 million for CIP, right? And if we need to spend that by next year, September 24th, and if you infuse that funds, he's gonna have to do additional scopes of work, marry that, go back to our planning. So yes, it does help to have the additional funds. Strategically, we are asking that be continuous, not a one-time, something that always provides a necessary source of funding for deferred maintenance.
Right on. So it would be better for you as a regular funding source so that we can go to this every year rather than just...
Absolutely. Frontline and prioritize the use of our federal funds, which have an expiration date, and then go ahead and break down the amount that the body is willing to provide us in the annual appropriations for deferred maintenance.
If we were to continue with the general pay plan and give janitors and bus drivers and frontline maintenance workers a pay raise, would that endanger or stop any current maintenance that's currently ongoing?
I don't see that it would. I think, again, you can't have a facility without the employees there to run the facilities. You can't run a department without the trained professionals needed to properly execute at various levels within the organization. So again, the strategy that we're looking at is really looking at both. Of course, as the superintendent indicated, an infusion of capital improvement projects will go straight to our CIP projects, would be helpful, but we also need that married to having the dedicated workforce and retaining the necessary skilled professionals.
So it would serve the best interest of DOE if the wages were more competitive for janitors, maintenance
Point of
workers.
order, Madam Chair. Point of order, Madam Chair.
State your point of order.
In deference and recognizing, it's been a general rule that we do not discuss, pending matters or matters that hasn't been brought before the body. I understand, and this is a matter of the CIP and the maintenance. The discussion of the pay raises is a matter that will be taken up as in due time, but it is not a part of this.
Madam Chair, the needs of the Department of Education are directly germane to this conversation, and if addressing the GPP would actually address their needs, I think it should belong in the scope of this
The
conversation.
GPP has not been
Okay.
considered by this body. as
Okay,
yet.
You just testified that it would help them.
Okay, order. Senator Parkinson, let's stick as much as possible to the CIP. This is about, infrastructure, whatever payments that are going to be made to ARP. It's going to be regarding infrastructure. If there's any payback for anything they've taken out prior for any salaries, that's for another bill. So let's just try and stay on course on the repairs of the school's facilities, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just another question. When we had the previous teacher's adjustment, was any maintenance deferred because of that? Did we have to stop any maintenance because of any previous pay raises?
I think technically to answer that, you're asking if we stopped maintenance.
Yeah, because we gave $22 million to the teachers or whatever it was. Did we have to stop any projects?
No, we didn't stop projects, we allocated budgets. So what happened was in the allocation of approved budget line items in the ARP, we had an amount of about 130 million. When we wanted to implement retention and recognize the teachers for their pay, they reallocated those line items in the budget. As our superintendent just testified, we were able internally, because of the state of where we're at with the recovery funds and where we're at the state with education, we were able to internally to restore those original appropriations that we reallocated. So did maintenance stop? The answer is no. We always had a maintenance, but the budgets originally when we implemented that was taken from a CIP and then later restored.
All right, and I guess my other thing is, we got to come back around to it. We have this huge stockpile of money that you guys are sitting on right now. Why should we give you guys that money rather than, these pay workers who have not been given a raise since 2014 when you're telling me, as your testimony, that you are in danger of losing some of this funding by the end of the fiscal year?
Can you repeat that question?
Senator Parkinson, can we stick to infrastructure and trying to veer away from the salary scenario here? We're talking about money that's needed to repair the schools, and that's where this money is going to. So as far as salaries, if we can just veer away from that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll rephrase.
Thank you.
Would it be premature to give such a large nest egg for infrastructure repair when you are still in danger and at risk of not even spending all of it? Would it be better to retool this bill as a yearly budget line rather than as a one-time thing?
I think we will leave the body to decide on that matter. What we are testifying is the need for a continuous appropriation. We've identified a large lump sum amount from our federal funds to direct directly towards CIP. Strategically, we want to execute that within the next year. Past that, the most strategic and the most helpful source of funding would be a continuous appropriation, lockbox, not subject to transfer authority, that goes straight to our facilities and maintenance.
I understand. Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to be I apologize if my questions are very basic. I just wanted to make sure that we were very crystal clear on it. Yeah, very basic. And so I guess the other thing I want to ask of you guys is, in terms of a continuous appropriation, what would be an adequate amount in terms of what your needs would be, as opposed to a lump sum of $30 million?
As it stands right now, with the testimony of our superintendent, we're looking at approximately $5 million annually
Okay.
for the 35 schools.
If we gave the Department of Education a choice between a lump sum of $30 million now or $10 million a year as a continuing appropriation for repairs, which would be more strategic and beneficial to the Department of Education?
Again, I'll refer to the testimony. We are asking that we get the continuous appropriation of $5 million and have that dedicated throughout our appropriation and annually provided for deferred maintenance.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. You have had me convinced. I think a better way is to go with the continuing appropriation. And if this bill was to be withdrawn and a continuing appropriation of $10 million on a year-to-year basis were offered, I would absolutely support that and support the Department of Education. Thank you for your time. I yield the rest of my time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson, and thank you for redirecting those questions. I appreciate that. Next up is the Oversight Chair of Education, Senator Chris Melifunction Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, GDOE team, for coming out for us this morning. I'm just very confused by this testimony. And, you know, I can't really fault my colleague, Senator Parkinson, for asking questions about the, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, the general pay plan raises, because this testimony from the acting superintendent really just muddies this whole issue. We're not here to discuss the general pay plan pay raises, but the basis of this testimony is basically don't give us $30 million because we want to give our employees a raise, and that's not what we're here to discuss. So I don't appreciate using the specter of these pay raises and whether or not the Guam Department of Education employees are going to get them as a way to really, I mean, are you serious? You're telling us you don't want $30 million? Because we have heard testimony from the Guam Department of Education just right across the hall in the public hearing room here at the Guam Congress Hall, testimony wherein the acting superintendent, Judy Wampat, had clearly stated on the record, and I wish I could find the tapes, that the federal funds we have, the $103.8 million, will not be enough. I heard it right over there in the public hearing room. I believe it was the GW roundtable hearing where she said that the money would not be enough to do all the capital improvement projects. So what are we doing here? We are trying to give you money. If you need it in a lockbox, don't spend it all at once. I mean, you can't out of one side of your mouth come to the legislature and talk about the state of the schools and how we need to correct the course that we're on, and then out of the other side of your mouth say, oh, no, we don't need $30 million because we're so concerned about giving pay raises. We're going to address the pay raises. We have a special session that was called by the governor to do that. And we're just really here to give you $30 million. What's the problem? What's the problem? And I'll just ask the question. I'm going to keep it as basic as my colleague, Senator Parkinson. Could you use the $30 million or not? Anyone? Could you use the $30 million or not? Let's just stay in our bubble here. We're discussing this measure, which is to provide $30 million in excess revenues to the Guam Department of Education for facilities and maintenance repair. We have not got to the conversation about the GPP. I'm sorry to keep bringing it up, but you know, really we started off on the wrong foot here with this testimony is what I'm saying. So could you use the $30 million or not? Could our school children benefit from having an extra $30 million in the bank? Because again, I'm going to go back to testimony from the acting superintendent that happened right across the hall. In this testimony, she said, if we're going to get these raises, we need to be fully funded. We need to get every single dollar in the budget request that we sent down to the legislature. And then we're going to need a supplemental budget. And the $22 million for the power. So I'm just asking you guys, trust us, we're going to get to the raises. Nobody here wants to see any of the hardworking employees at GDOE not get a raise. We committed to address that. Right now, we're just trying to give you money that you have said yourselves you need. And I understand the politics at play here, and I don't want you guys to be caught in the crossfire. And let's just be honest, you were hesitant to come down here precisely because you did not want to be caught in the crossfire. But I don't care how many shots I have to take to support the children of Guam and the public school system. We should all be on the same page. If you're going to come down here and tell us you need money for this, you need money for that, you need money for the other things, and then we turn around and grant that request and give it to you when we have the governor in the State of the Island address saying it's not her problem, it's our problem, use the excess revenues, and then we turn around and do that, and now you guys are saying, oh, Muña, no, we don't want it, we're good, because we have this mountain of federal cash that we might have a problem spending, that you guys have said yourselves is not going to be enough to fund. I've seen the HFF, it's a binder like this thick, full of all kinds of projects that need to be done, right, Phil? Is the binder this thick or not? Yeah, it's a thick binder. Yeah, it is thick. We don't need, yeah, I know. We're good. It's a lot of projects. And again, I'm just going to go back to what the acting superintendent had told us right over here is that they're going to need.
Your mic, hold on,
Yes, ma'am.
Senator. It's only because, is your mic working or not, please?
It's not, yeah.
Can we take
It
a
was
minute?
more of a rhetorical question, ma'am.
I understand.
Thank
I
you.
didn't mean to interrupt, but let's
Yeah.
take a moment's recess just so we can have that addressed. If you have any comments to make, we certainly would want you to make it for the record. With that, we're in recess for a minute.
Thank you.
Committee of the Whole is back in order. So Senator Barnett,
Thank you, ma'am.
you're recognized.
Thank you so much. So let me just rephrase the question here. That's a very simple, basic question. Could our school system and our school children, our school facilities, our school maintenance benefit from an extra $30 million in the bank, American, U.S. monies? Yes or no?
We'll have a superintendent, acting superintendent, answer that. Speaker Wampat?
Hi, Speaker. Good morning.
Were you able to hear the question, Speaker Wampat?
I think she might be muting. Are you muted?
Yeah, you're speaking, but we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Can you hear us? Nod your head if you can hear us.
Blink if you're okay.
Yes.
Oh, there.
we are.
There.
Yes.
Let have, not deducting his time, but Senator Barnett, can you repeat that question
Yes,
again?
Yes, ma'am. And Acting Soup, I don't know if you heard what I had talked about, the testimony you provided previously to the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts. If you'd like me to reiterate what you had said over in the public hearing room?
Oh, no, I heard that part.
Okay.
But
So again, the question is, would our school system, our school children, our school facilities benefit from an extra $30 million in the bank? Yes or no?
as I stated in my testimony, I said that any help, of course, yes, absolutely, we can use. But what I was making reference to was that when I came to the legislature and we were looking at the available ARP monies, and that was even before we started to reprogram them and redirect them to ESF and CG, was that the amount was not as sufficient. But as we kept scrubbing the list, then we were able to bring that dollar amount up to be able now to meet what the Army Corps of Engineers had given an estimated amount to do work, the CIP projects with the 35 schools. And then we gave you a listing of what those are. So those are big projects like roofing, plumbing, restrooms, doors, electrical, and so forth. And that was like to the tune that Mr. Cooper Smith mentioned, that actually went to the
Ma'am,
AG's
I'm
office.
sorry, Acting Soup, his name is Franklin Cooper Nurse. Dispensa, sorry.
I'm sorry.
We want to make sure we swore in the right person.
Kung ganay dispensa de. Lo, si Franklin po sa bayagang Franklin then. So anyway, so so the numbers are fluid, of course, because as we start to put out the request, then we would list it as a requisition form. And that's why, the amount when I said earlier was not going to be sufficient at the time. Remember when I came, that was my first week when I came to the legislature, and I was actually working with the amount that was already established by the two previous deputies. And, coming in, I set new priorities, and the new priorities was the facilities. So that meant that I needed to get more money. And I kept asking my management team to continue to move more of the projects over to ESF to free up as much as we can from ARP, with the exception of a 20% holdback that has to be strictly for curriculum or learning loss. So that's why you got that amount that was given by Franklin. So when you look at that dollar amount then, and you look at the projection given to us by the Army Corps of Engineers, then we were able to establish then that we would have sufficient, ARP monies to be able to work on those specific CIPs at this schools.
Ma'am, is that a yes
And
or
when-
a no?
Well, when I said, I did say that absolutely, of course we can. And
Okay.
who in their right mind would ever want to turn money down?
That's what
Tell
I'm
me.
wondering. That's why I'm confused by the testimony, because we go almost the whole page until we get to the part that maybe might be a yes, which is, can we benefit from more money for CIP? Absolutely. We can always benefit from more. But at this time,
Yes,
we are in a position to address our
Right.
facilities and CIP needs through the current federal funding we have. This would in turn free up the funds in this bill, this $30 million bill, to support the pay raises. That's not what the bill is for. It's to support the
Okay, no,
facilities and the
and
maintenance.
you're right, and I understand, but also let me go back to in terms of what is it that I told you in those previous roundtable meetings that we've had, and when you had asked about why was the schools in the conditions that they're in, and that's because of previous many years of really not providing sufficient funds for maintenance. And that's why I said that this was once in a lifetime funding that we got, the ARP, that we could actually request that the monies be used. It's an allowable expense for us to use for our schools. And the letter we had just prepared to send to US DOE, and I met with them as well last week, letting them know that this is what we want to do for our schools. And they were happy that this was going to be one large amount request to go in rather than piecemeal requests for different types of projects. So, if we didn't do that, that's when I said that I would probably have to come to the legislature for a supplemental to be able to address all 35 schools. And the point I'm saying here is that I don't want to be the one to make the decision that if I didn't have enough monies, that I am going to decide which schools then will not then, be repaired. Or, or like I'm going to do the roofs, the doors and everything else, and maybe I don't do the bathroom, that type of thing. But don't say that that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm saying is, yes, with the amount that we did, is to be able now then to go out and address all 35 schools with all of the CIP projects. And Mr. Phil Tovius there would be able to even give you the listing of all the different projects to be done. And that the money that we have with ARP will be then sufficient to do just that.
Thank you, ma'am. But, I have to state on the record, one of the reasons for my confusion is that you had sent me a message on Sunday. This is just, what is today? I'm sorry, there's so many sessions going on. It's Tuesday, right? So on just 48 hours ago, you sent me a text message, ma'am, and I'm just going to read it out because you didn't say off the record. To help us allow GDOE to use the money Dueñas is appropriating for facilities.
Yes,
What I am able to set aside from ARP is still limited. I can use that money to help with other areas not included in CIP like gyms, playgrounds, sports fields, walkway coverings, exterior sewage piping, fencing, etc. The above are not part of ARP monies, roofing, walls, plumbing, doors, restrooms, electrical, AC, etc. Ma'am, and I'm here to support the schools. I'm here to fight for the schools, and I'm confused why you would tell me 2 days ago to allow you to use this money that we're trying to give you, $30 million, when you said yourself that you want to be able to set aside this money, because let's be honest, you got a bunch of CIP, but you scratch one project, you find 10 more. So I think it's irresponsible, frankly, for you to tell us that you now don't need this money and you're good with the federal funds, when again, just 2 days ago, you were singing a completely different song, ma'am.
Well, no, because what I was talking, you have to remember, facilities, I'm talking about the physical structure of the building, capital improvement projects. The ones that I listed there are other projects, yes, that we would like to also, do. And what I said was the CIP monies that we have, yes, projects would then be covered by ARP monies. Absolutely, they will be. That's what I'm saying. And of course, yes, there's so many things that we could do in the schools, and we're trying to tap, as much monies as we can to be able then to do more of that work. We've actually put aside monies to address, like I told you in our plan, the self-help plan. So some of those monies are actually set aside also then to buy supplies and materials to take out to the schools. So what I'm saying is that we're making it work, at the department. You would have never heard this before, because if we would just come in and say, yes, give us all the money that you can give us, but you have to give us some credit here, knowing how we are financially with the government, because this is the first time that we have federal dollars to use for the plant, the fiscal plant, which are our school buildings. And when I said that at the end there, the 5 million, because I don't want to find ourselves back where we are today when we go out in this year and next year to repair all the schools, right? And they're done. And then what? No more money is coming to maintain. So that's why I'm saying we want to enter into a public-private partnership. We want to be able to do that as soon as we're done with the repairs of our schools, then allow us then to go into a public-private partnership, appropriate, at least from what we heard, is 5 million. That's the figure that was given to us, to be able now to address our 35 schools, in the same fashion that our lead schools are being maintained by a private company. But public-private is because a private company who would maintain and manage, and our guys that we have for the maintenance, so we're not going to get rid of the guys. The guys will be the ones doing also the work. That's what I'm saying. Do that after we're done we're fixing all the schools. Don't just let it go again without being repaired for years to come, because you'll be right back where we are today. That's what I'm talking about. I'm trying to be reasonable here at the same time, knowing, of course, the financial situation of the government. But I do know that this is a unique opportunity for not just, like you're saying, the lapse funds that you've identified, but also federal dollars that could be used, ARP monies that could actually be used for facilities.
Right. Yes, ma'am. I mean, this is definitely a unique time that you have, the legislature trying to throw you guys $30 million, and you're saying, we don't know. I mean, it's actually pretty crazy, in my opinion. But, I got to go back to the intent of this bill, Acting Soup, and the intent of this bill is to replace the money that was supposed to be used for capital improvement projects, but was instead being used for raises. And I just can't help but notice we're right back at this juncture where the conversation of raises is overshadowing the real conversation that we should be having about, giving you guys the tools and the funds to do what you have to do, because I can't help but feel if you're trying to use this money for raises or whatever, or you don't want it, or you're good with the federal funds, I mean,
no,
I'm going to predict that in a year you're going to be back here saying that you're short or that you need 20 mil for the power bill. So,
Senator, may I ask you a question? That I know that you said that it was brought up a point of, information from Senator Blas about bringing up another bill. I understand that. But then clarify to us, okay, is that you have a separate funding just for the pay raises, but you have sufficient monies as well to provide additional monies for facilities? Or is it all from one pot is what I'm trying to find out? Because I have no access to that information.
Ma'am, I don't believe that we're there yet, but we are committed to addressing the issue of the pay raises in the special session that the governor called. But what I don't appreciate, with all due respect, is I don't appreciate us not being able to have an honest conversation about what this money is for without talking about the pay raises. That's a separate issue. We're trying to give you money. We're going to address the pay raises. So let's just have a real honest conversation, because I'm going to go back to everything you said at the public hearing room. I'm going to go back to the over 5 hours of testimony we got from the PTOs and the parents, the testimony that says they're not heard, the testimony that says, please, legislature, do something. I'm going to go back to the governor again, telling us use the excess revenues to help save our schools. And that's the conversation we're having right now. We're not having a conversation about can we save the schools and give everyone a raise. That the raise conversation, who knows? We could be having that at 2 p.m. And I'm willing to have that, totally. I think all of the hardworking employees at GDOE deserve that pay increase, but we're not there yet, madam. So if we could just have an honest conversation about whether or not you need this $30 million today. That's the conversation we're having, with all due respect, ma'am.
I totally understand, but you're going to have to also understand where I'm coming from. I've been there where you're sitting right now. And normally when we make decisions about how we're going to expend the monies, is that either you're right, you either decide there's going to be one way or the other, or you somehow share the cost or what have you. I don't want to jeopardize our employees, our hardworking employees. I don't want to lose any of our employees. But at the same time, yes, I want to fix our school. And if you think that this is something that should not be discussed, together, then, I leave it up to you. You are the decision makers. You would ultimately decide and vote what it is that you want to appropriate. And we're just going to have to live with it and use it. Use whatever you give us. Trust me, we're not going to spend the money, frivolously. We will spend it where they need to be spent.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, and I understand, these conversations, especially with, the nature of your testimony. I mean, we have intertwined these issues, and I'm just not even sure we can untangle them during this session to really discuss what this is about. But let me again just go back to the legislature being constantly thrown under the bus for underfunding education. Constantly. You guys were over here in the public hearing room. Oh, if you guys appropriated us enough money, or if we had enough money to do this, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation. And yet here we are trying to give you money, and the only thing we're worried about is the ability to give the hardworking employees a pay raise. Anyway, my time is up. Thank you so much. And are we doing another round?
Respond?
Yes, we're doing another round.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry,
Can
Superintendent.
I respond?
Yes.
Please. Thank you.
Senator, I understand exactly where, you're coming from, because I was the former chair as well, and we struggled with monies. We passed legislation in the legislature, and that is the 14 points for adequate education. And every year, the Department of Education will send its budget down based on the 14 points. But we've never gotten, and I know that for a fact, because when we at the legislature have never really ever given them the exact amount that they have requested for. So a lump sum is given for the department to decide then how it is to be used in the different object categories. And always personnel has taken a top priority. That's the reality. And I'm glad you're there. And I'm glad you're pushing. I'm glad you're fighting for education. And I'm hoping that with this new fiscal year, when we submit our budget, I won't be there, but when the department submits its budget, it's going to be based on the 14 points. And I hope then that you'll be able to adequately then appropriate the monies, not just for those 14 points, but also for facilities, so that then we would always have a healthy and safe environment for our children. So just my
Sujus Masi, thank you, Senator Barnett, and thank you, Acting Superintendent. Speaker Terlaje, you're up next, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It is quite disturbing that, for years, there's been this back and forth. GDOE sends down budgets. We are unable to fund those budgets. Not just me, but legislatures before me for decades, unable to fully fund GDOE's requests. We have before us an opportunity to give GDOE money that we might not have in the next fiscal year. This is money that is excess from the current fiscal year so far. It's a unique opportunity. And we are also answering to parents and teachers who are complaining about their children going to school with rats, cockroaches, broken bathrooms. Do I have to go through the entire list? I'm just floored. We have set aside funding for GDOE, but GDOE exceeded the TEFF. That's the land taxes set aside for GDOE, and it has grown way beyond that. In fact, we have prioritized the debt service for the new schools and the GDOE administration brand new building above all other agencies of the government. We pay the debt service on that. It doesn't come out of GDOE's budget or anything. And so it is very perplexing when I hear it from principals. They try to explain to their parents who are putting in money to fix these schools, their own money, and they, after paying taxpayer money, the principals tell the teachers and the parents believe, oh, it's a funding issue. It's a funding issue. They can't fix it because it's a funding issue. Not that it's a management issue, and they deprioritized those projects. They say it's a funding issue, and here we have an opportunity. Actually, I think it's a priority issue. Because while previous legislatures said, sorry, DOE, we can't give you what you need because we're going to take care of the rest of the government of Guam first. We're going to take care of all the salary raises first. And then we're going to take care of our broken schools. Of course, there's never going to be enough money. And right now, I don't even understand this thing about why, if we can't get the people from GDOE to come down and advocate for GDOE, then that should be very clear to the teachers and the parents who are putting in their money. And I've been trying to tell them, that is the problem. They want to tell you there's no money, but when they have an opportunity to get the money, they want to take care of politics. I say we stay focused. And I want to ask the maintenance person or anyone, the superintendent, Frank, if we have a balance of ARP funds. It sounds gigantic. Is that balance and the projects that you're setting aside to cover with that balance enough to cover the list of projects necessary to fix these schools so that they are going to safely open in the next school year?
Yeah, so the total balance, I'm not sure, what are we talking about, the 114? Yes, that amount for the projects that have been worked on to date, assessed, scope of work's been done, specifications, that'll cover these projects right now.
Right, but is that those projects, are those all the projects on your list?
No, they are not.
Not by any means, right?
Yes, Senator or Speaker.
That's what I want to make clear here. Let's not try to fool everybody that we're going to take care of all the pending projects with the ARP money. I don't think that's correct. We still have, I think you guys are relying on an Army Corps assessment several years ago?
Yes.
How old is that?
About 4 years old.
4 years old.
Yeah.
And so let's assume that the pricing was correct, or their estimates, right? We've seen almost every government project that's bid out exceed by far any estimates that were made even in the last 4 years just because of rising costs. So I am very much hopeful that you are going to be successful, but I want to know, so what are you going to do with the rest of the projects to cover those? What are you going to do with these things that were read out earlier, including gyms, playgrounds, sports fields, walkway coverings, exterior sewage piping, fencing, the things that are purportedly non-CIP or non-ARP funds?
Yeah, well, Senator, the projects that we have been identified as major priorities, right?
Yes.
So we have the full refurbishment of up to 35 schools. That includes roof, which creates falls and cracks and ceiling leaks. That's one. We have electrical that was identified by HHF, who worked with Army Corps, that identifies wiring from transformers to the main distribution panels where codes have been upgraded and our lines are still undersized. So those are included because they're major issues. We have bathrooms. These are some of the more frequent callbacks we get in maintenance to repair because of our age facilities. Air conditioning, security doors because of vandalism. Well, it will help with vandalism. We're standardizing everything. We're going with aluminum, with break-in prevention, latch plates and everything to try to prevent break-ins. So these are the projects that have been identified up front. There are a lot of other stuff like the gyms, like you said, but that's going to take some time as it did to get to this level with this set of projects. That's going to take some time to assess, come up with scopes of work, and possibly even get an architectural and engineering firm involved, because we don't have as-builts. When we do a sewer as an example, we go around, we look for manholes, we look for clean-outs. We're kind of in blind trying to figure out which way they route. So first step is probably getting an A&E to do that legwork to determine where to put as-builts together. So you got to know what's there before you fix it. Once that's done, then the plan to approach the work or the corrective action is set in place. So
Yes.
we always need the money, but it's going to take some time. And I'm just going to go out and say, if this money that is being proposed right now has a deadline.
It does not. This is
It's
general
okay.
funds, no deadline. That's the thing.
So, because it's going to take some time to do
Yes,
this.
I want to thank you for the work that you've done. I'm very impressed by the superintendent's decision to transfer or, just reallocate the ARP money and to get approval for that towards CIP. I think that was an excellent move, an excellent decision. I want to thank you for all the work you've done to actually get these projects lined up, ready to go. And she said she sent some of them to the AG, $84 million worth for 35 schools. But again, it's not the entire list of projects that need to be done for these schools. And as far as I can tell, there is no source of funding currently available for the rest of the list, right? Unless we get some other windfall. There is none. And so this is the thing. We've also put a mandate that we want the schools to be fixed before the next school year. And I understand that some of these projects, roofing might take even beyond that, but we want to see that begin. We don't want to tell our children anymore, it's okay that you only have one restroom for 40 kids or whatever, and, per classroom, let alone in the school. Just that kind of stuff. We are trying to change the standard for our students, and I think we can, and I think we have a unique opportunity to do that. And so I say we cover more of the projects, and who chose the top priorities?
Those are aligned to the Army Corps of Engineer, HHF.
They
agency.
prioritize the projects, correct?
It kind of like, it's coincidental because they just happen to be the top priority issues. So you fix the roof, you have you lessen the potential for fall hazards from spalls,
Yes.
electrical hazards for dripping into the conduits and distribution panels, et cetera. So it's kind of like just common sense, but it does align to the HHF report.
Okay. Yeah, and we know also, that there are projects probably not listed there, because that's 4 years ago. Things have changed. We also know, like, for example, flooding. Flooding is a real problem, and you can't fix it by fixing a roof, It's flooding, like GW floods throughout the school grounds. It's a flood, like like a village flood. So I know that those are some other things that aren't exactly on the list because they're hard to even describe at this point, or how to determine the fix. Yes.
Senator, just on that note, as Phil indicated, right now there is a current plan to address the current needs. As you're aware, those needs, and even as you just mentioned with the assessment being owed, those needs do change daily. It's going to be a moving target, and there's going to be a lack of precision when we can identify all the issues in the future at our aging facilities, which was the strategy. We're saying that along in incorporating our leverage, that we do need a long-term source of funding directly related to that deferred maintenance, only because it's a moving target. We do understand that we can't predict which schools are going to fail, what plumbing is going to fail, what electrical goes out, if there's a break-in, if there's an accident, if there's an earthquake damage. Those all need long-term solutions. So again, to go to the point, he's done his part. We've aligned, and I appreciate the comments that we've taken the initiative to identify those funds, reprioritize. We have, and again, the long-term solution will provide us for that maintenance, routine maintenance that is necessary at the schools.
But not all of those are routine maintenance. I don't think the Army Corps did an assessment of routine maintenance. They did an assessment of maintenance projects that needed to be done.
So that's what the funds are looking at. And the one that was just released is the general contract refurbishment, which is the larger CIP projects. Once we address the large critical areas, as he mentioned, that's aligned with the assessment, then we need the source of funding to continue the upkeep.
Yes, that's exactly what we are working on, right? Because those are also tied to the sanitation and safety of the schools. Even fencing, as simple as that, can't be done, you're going to have issues continuously. Yeah, I just wanted, just, I guess use my 1 minute remaining to just say thanks for all your work. We are trying to help you to get more work done. You've got an efficient team going. Let's take advantage of that. Let's get these things done. While you've got the partnership of GPA and everyone else, hopefully we've passed another bill, or hopefully we will pass another bill that also says bring the entire government down and everything else that you might need. And let's solve these things once and for all. And then maintenance will be effective. But if we can't fix these things, we can't maintain broken things. We need to fix them and then maintain, and hopefully find an efficient way to do that. But we're all together on this, and it's actually supposed to be an entire government of Guam effort. When the Organic Act was changed to change the word governor is in charge of education, it didn't leave the governor out. It said it's going to be shared. Government of Guam is going to take care of Department of Education, or the education of the children of Guam. So I say we work together, and we stop pointing fingers, throwing people, it's, how do you call that? Shrugging the responsibility. It's not on me, it's on you. No, it's on all of us. I'm telling you, I don't know, it was very hard for me. It's been hard for many years. I've been here as a senator, and we have to tell people that's all we could afford for DOE. Well, that's not the case today. So why am I going to say that today? I am not. I am going to say we can afford more for DOE, and I am going to give more to DOE. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. We're going to have one more, Senator Lujan, come up next, and then after that we'll take a short break for lunch, which we will have to be back here at 1:30. So just a heads up to my colleagues. Senator Lujan, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cooper Sab, you quoted having the technical ability and the capacity to do a large-scale scope of work to get to the stage where GDOE can actually develop the procurement package to go out to these construction bids. Also, in the process of putting these packages together, we realized that technical expertise did not exist in the Department of Education, and therefore you had to partner up. You had an MOU with GPA, did you not?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have shovel-ready projects?
I'm sorry, come again?
Do you have shovel-ready projects?
Right now, we do.
You do have.
After all the assessment and the scoping and specifications, they're all in procurement, requisitioned, and just pending the process to get it out for turning dirt.
Okay, and this was done with the help of the partnership with GPA?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
Senator.
Are you still in partnership with GPA?
Yes, we are, Senator.
And how long is that partnership for?
Senator, I'm not aware if there's an expiration on the MOU. And in going through those comments, what we lacked was an engineer. We tried several times to recruit one and was unsuccessful, which is what led to the leverage of using GPA's engineers.
Okay. You know, in those shovel-ready projects, what are the priorities? What is first in line to get done? I mean, I'm sure, you know, when the procurement is done, that project will get started, but what is the priority on projects?
Two that come right off the bat are the air conditioners for the classrooms, which by law is required, and then the refurbishment, so we generalize of the 35 schools, which includes roof work, wall cracks, ceiling leaks, and roof coating.
Okay. Is that inclusive when you say roof cracks and all that and ceilings?
That's one
like the
project
gym,
in itself.
The gym at GW?
No. So, well, the gym for the concrete roofs, yes. Or gyms with concrete roof.
Okay.
I don't believe the entire southern high is concrete. Most of it is pre-engineered steel. Walkway canopies. The one-line diagram to get our distribution panels up to code, because they're way undersized at this point. Security doors, which basically are aluminum doors, aluminum frames, and latch protection, anti-break-in type guards, and bathrooms. Those are like everyday issues at DOE. We take care of that. That kind of solves a good part of the F&M's everyday issues and callbacks.
Okay, that being said, are these still at this point stuck in procurement? I mean, what is being done right now? I mean, of all those priorities, are what you had mentioned being worked on at this point, or are they still in procurement?
I didn't get an update this morning, but procurement is really going through that, and as soon as they're done, and that's not a lengthy process itself, the procurement process itself is long, but the procurement handling of this to turn it into an IFB or an RFP is very short, and then it goes to legal for their review before it goes to the AG.
Okay, so as we speak, basically, they're either in procurement, but in regards to the fix of the school at this point, you don't have boots on the ground doing it right now. Any of these, even priorities, they're in procurement. You said they're almost ready to be done, but as we speak right now, it's not being done, right?
No, they're not.
It's not being done? Is that correct?
Not. It's in the process of getting there.
Okay. Do you have I know you're in charge of maintenance, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Senator.
Who is the construction, do you have per se within, because I know that the acting superintendent said she put a team together. At this point, did she put maybe a construction manager to oversee this, or is it just yourself that, again, will oversee this?
No. For this project, the engineering team of GPA, which consists of the engineer 3.
Okay.
And 4 engineer 1s.
Okay.
Will take on the CM. I have included a RFP on that priority list that would include an A&E firm and a CM, just in the event that Bart and his team are not able to keep up with the QC, the CM, when all these projects take place. So it's just a contingency in the event that they're not able to keep up, so we can keep moving forward.
Okay. When do you foresee the first procurement stuff to be done, and when do you see the actual work to be done at whichever school is done first? When do you foresee that?
I'm hoping in a couple, maybe 3 months.
3 months?
Yes, for the entire process. There's stuff in place I can share with the AG. So there's stuff going on. Dr. Wampat worked with the AG, and I don't know if it's been finalized or not yet, but Attorney Fred Nishihara has been identified as the AG that's going to work directly with us in frontlining and prioritizing these activities. So hopefully that shortens that window. And I'm giving 2 to 3 months as an outside window. I'm hoping that we maybe as short as a month if that process is set in place.
Okay, so basically, if it's 3 months, we're looking at June possibly, or maybe even May, and in the short period of time, or the shorter time, and June being maybe the longest that will happen. Okay, that being said, you have from June to December, you have about another 6 months until we are able to expend these monies, right?
No, we have till September 2024.
2024.
Yes,
okay.
Senator.
So that being said, what percentage of the work that we've identified, or I guess you're still identifying projects, because as time goes on, the situation doesn't fix itself, so it just gets probably even worse. So by the time they get around to after procurement and awarding of that maybe the situation had gotten worse. So it might be I mean, again, with the elements and things being exposed to, again, it's not going to heal itself. It has to have the intervention to be able to do something like that. So, what percentage, again, of the projects that have been identified, the major situations in the schools, will be done by and expended, the money expended by September 2024?
Senator, all of these projects have a window of actual work that can be performed by September 30, 2024. The issues would be bidding, because everybody's focused on the military, the big money contracts, getting bidders to participate. So those are unknowns at this point until we actually put the bids out and get returns and see what comes of that. So, but we're making every effort. So we've changed our position from going these 5 projects I mentioned that were all generalized into the refurbishment group. We've changed that from individual to a package, so that we have a general contractor managing and coordinating every school site, so that work can be performed without contractors running into each other and at a steady pace. So we've given every thought that we possibly could to make this thing try and work out as smoothly as we could think of.
You know, as been previously said, the chair of education said, of course, the superintendent was down here across the hall in regards to the funding that is needed. I was there as well when she'd asked to replenish the money that was used for raises. That, you know, and that money could go a long ways for the maintenance of the schools and all that. We just find out, of course, that this bill with $30 million is open-ended, and it can be used for the maintenance. Let me ask you this, because it's been mentioned that we can do the CIPs with the existing federal funds that we have at this point. And let me just ask you outright, do you want this $30 million? Do you need this $30 million?
Of course we do.
Do you want it?
Yes.
Is that what you're here to ask?
We want it
Are
and
you here
we-
to
and we
testify?
need it,
Are you here
yes.
to testify that it says the 37th Guam Legislature passed this bill, we want this?
Senator, the one thing I do want to say is if it's an expiring fund.
It's not an expiring fund.
Okay, so yeah, 30 million is, did you want to add something, Frank? Yeah.
Okay.
It's needed.
Senator, I think everyone on the table is saying yes, any funds infused into the Department of Education is greatly needed, greatly welcomed.
Well, we're
One
here
of the-
specifically for this bill. So are you here to
Absolutely. So-
testify in favor of the bill?
You know, I leave the testimony from our superintendents on the record. I support and I commend the legislative
intent.
body, yes, for giving us the funding. What I would ask, and in line with the testimony, is a one-time versus continuous support, please, to this body, please. The one-time is going to be appreciative, but whether it has a lapsing date of September or next year, I think that in order to better
this bill does,
serve...
it's not expiring. That's what
No,
I'm
what I'm
saying.
saying,
It's not expiring.
even whether it expires next year, whether it expires 6 months, whether it expires 10 months from now, we'll be greater serving our school system if we have a dedicated source of funding for deferred maintenance.
So let me ask you this, since it doesn't have an expiration, if we give you this 30 million now, could you not save it for your deferred maintenance?
Possibly. Lockbox appropriations, we can do that, right? There's different ways and examinations of managing the funds, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and
there's-
the reason
there's
why I was
different
asking is
considerations.
because we have it now. I mean, in previous times, we're trying to find money to give it to DOE. This is the time that we have it, and I'm just baffled in the fact that, yeah, we can use it, but, you know, can you just give it to us maybe next year and the year after? I'm saying, okay, can we give it to you now? Can we give it to you now? And then you'll save it and you use it as you need it. And that's what we're saying, because we may not have it in years to come.
Senator, may I respond, please?
Yes.
When you say that it's not expired, and although we know that we go from fiscal year to fiscal year, and you're going to write legislation in to say that this will be a continuous appropriation
expended,
until
yes.
fully expended, okay. And then now to say to put it in lock boxes, because we've actually done that many times, and there's never really a safe lock box unless you're going to put the money in the bank in DOE's account, where then we establish then a lockbox from there, not necessarily it to be drawn down or that we need to put in a request for the monies to be drawn down or to be deposited into our account. Is that what you're looking at?
Okay, you know what? I wasn't able to make out everything that was said. And
Well, I'm sure then that, your legal counsel there be able to help out when you're going to address that, you want to be able to transfer these monies or to appropriate these monies to DOE's account so that then, yes, like we said earlier, is to be able then to make sure that we would have the 5 million for this public-private partnership to continue with the maintenance of our schools. Mm-hmm. We use what we can, so that hypothetically 30 million. And so we use, let's say 10, 15 million of that for additional projects outside of the CIPs. The balance then to be placed in a lockbox account of DOE's account, then to use 5 million, for each year for the next 3 years. To be able then to have this public-private partnership for the maintenance of our schools, right?
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
That's
okay.
Exactly. Now, okay, Madam Speaker or Superintendent or Mr. Cooper Nurse as well, it doesn't matter. What exactly do you mean about public-private partnership? Because in that same roundtable as well, when I asked, and we were talking about maintenance, and there was great concerns about some of the outsourced maintenance that were happening and that it just wasn't working. And so I know that board member Mary Gutierrez had mentioned that it's not working. And so what exactly is working and what exactly is a public-private partnership mean? Because we want to get into this, but then you have a board member that it's not working. So what does that mean?
Well, there's actually, different forms of a public-private partnership. One is we could do something very similar to what we are experiencing right now with the Lee schools, and those the owners, of course, are maintaining the school, and we pay, or the legislature, the government pays, a certain amount of that every year for them to do just that. So that's one way. The other, of course, another public-private partnership is where we will then contract this out to a company who will then manage the maintenance of all the schools using our employees. That's the public site where our employees, our facilities and maintenance people, will be working with the manager, or like a general, a CM, I guess, but not a construction. We're not talking about construction, but more the maintenance then of the facilities. So that's a different form of a public-private partnership. So what we need to do, of course, is to look at both and see what is going to be the most feasible and most affordable, for the department and the government.
Mm-hmm. No, I applaud you in wanting to get a public-private partnership for the schools, but I can almost assure you that the older schools will probably, you'll probably not have anyone wanting to maybe maintain the older schools because of maybe the cost to maintain the older schools, might not be just a blanket thing. You're going to pay, for a public-private partnership, and here we go. The newer schools probably, of course, will have less maintenance situations they have. The older schools are going to require even more. So you may have separate contracts of that, if at all you have any takers for the older schools. You probably won't have takers for all the schools, knowing that the schools have different conditions, and the age of the schools are a big factor with that. But one other question.
Senator, you're absolutely correct. And so what I think needs to also happen is that there's going to have to be either structural engineers, other engineers, to go out to all the schools and really look and give an assessment in terms of, what is the shelf life of that particular facility. Mm-hmm. And that way, then we can plan for the future in terms of then building or replacing some of these really old schools. And if you recall, we did say that all of our schools are basically over 50 years old. And, the elements, of course, in Guam is very different from, how the buildings do last hundreds of years here in the States, but definitely not for us in Guam.
Okay. One last thing, Speaker, Acting Superintendent, Dr. Wampat, would you not say that the $30 million that this bill identifies for, again, open-ended with maintenance, whatever it is that the school would need, would this not go a long way to fulfill the requirements of the 14 points of the Adequate Education Act?
Well, the 14 points, you have to remember, is not just facilities. It actually calls for certified professionals, counselors, librarians, and teachers. Sure. Like that. Yeah. And then the air conditioning, so there are many others. So it's a combination of facility and, of course, the academics. So for this to be used, I would say, yes, for facilities and outside of the facility, that the senator has read off. Those are just, when you think about a school, you include everything all the way out to the fence. So you're looking at grounds as well, sports fields, things of that nature. The academic side of it, we're very fortunate that we have the consolidated grant that has really been very helpful. I just attended a meeting. It's not quite official yet, but we are getting an increase in our consolidated grant. So that's additional monies, again, that we can can use for the academic side for all the different programs and projects that, we have that, we don't need local funds to be used for. And so therefore, when you really stop and think about it, that how much that is helping us, then, the monies actually would be, yes, primarily for salaries, but then, it should include utilities and facility maintenance.
Okay. One last question, Madam Superintendent. Has the new superintendent that will be coming in communicated with you regarding these issues, and therefore there will be a smooth transition, knowing these situations that we're in right now, and the roundtables and public hearings we've been having? Has he communicated with you regarding transitioning in and you transitioning out?
Well, I've already informed the board that I will, at the end of, my contract, is to stay on for a couple of weeks to do the transition. And yes, just now I've received an email where he would like to open the lines of communication. But there definitely will be a formal transition.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Acting Superintendent.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Colleagues, we're going to take a short lunch break. We'll be back at 1:30, and when we come back, we will start with Senator Sabina Perez when we come back. Okay, thank you. Please be prompt, 1:30.